Charge here. This is it. That's a goal.
They are the masterminds behind the bench, the architects of victory, and the scapegoats for defeat. Some coaches build dynasties and earn their players' undying loyalty. Others rule by fear, leaving a trail of broken trust and bitter rivalries. These are the most loved and most hated coaches in NHL history. First, the ones who earn the hate. For a time, Mike Babcock wasn't just a coach. He was the coach. He was seen as a tactical genius, a master motivator with a resume that was untouchable. A Stanley Cup with Detroit, 2 Olympic gold medals with Team Canada. He was hired by the Toronto Maple Leafs for a record-setting contract to save the franchise. He was, by all accounts, the best in the world. But behind the championships and the confident stare, a darker story was unfolding. A story of a coaching style that wasn't just demanding, it was demeaning. A story of psychological abuse that would eventually lead to one of the most spectacular falls from grace in modern sports. The most infamous example of his methods came during his time in Toronto, and it involved his young superstar in the making, Mitch Marner. During Marner's rookie season, Babcock, wanting to send a message, privately asked a struggling 19-year-old to make a list, ranking all his teammates from hardest working to laziest. Believing it was a confidential exercise with his coach, Marner complied. Then came the betrayal. Babcock took that private list and shared it directly with the veteran players Marner had ranked at the bottom. It was a calculated act of humiliation, designed to put a rookie in his place by turning the locker room against him. It was a complete and total breach of trust. And it wasn't an isolated incident. In Detroit, his treatment of forward Johan Franzen was even worse. Franzen, who dealt with severe depression and the effects of multiple concussions, called Babcock a terrible person, the worst I've ever met. He described a verbal assault on the bench during the 2012 playoffs that left him in tears, a moment he called a nervous breakdown. Former teammate Chris Chelios later confirmed the story, admitting that Babcock's treatment of Franzen was horrifically cruel. The stories kept coming. He made legendary forward Mike Modano a healthy scratch for what would have been his 1500th career game, a petty move that denied a Hall of Famer a significant milestone in his final season. The final nail in his coffin came in 2023. After being hired by the Columbus Blue Jackets for a fresh start, his old habits immediately resurfaced. Reports emerged that Babcock was demanding players hand over their phones so he could look through their personal photos to get to know them. The backlash from players in the NHLPA was swift and severe. Babcock was forced to resign before ever coaching a single game, a stunning and humiliating end. It was the final proof that his methods, once hailed as genius, were now seen for what they were: toxic, manipulative, and no longer welcome in the NHL. Where Mike Babcock's controversies were about quiet manipulation, John Tortorella's are about loud volcanic eruptions. He is the fiery, confrontational, and brutally honest coach who has waged war on the media, his own players, and even opposing coaches for over 2 decades. He is the ultimate my way or the highway bench boss. His most legendary moment of rage came in January 2014, when he was the coach of the Vancouver Canucks. After a massive line brawl to start a game against the Calgary Flames, Tortorella was caught on camera screaming across the ice at the Flames bench. But that was just a warm-up act. During the first intermission, a furious Tortorella marched down the hallway and physically tried to storm the Flames' visiting locker room to fight their coach, Bob Hartley. It took a wall of players and security to restrain him. The act earned him a 15-day suspension, but it perfectly captured the unhinged intensity that defines his career. His press conferences are the stuff of legend. He has a storied history of battling with reporters, especially during his time with the New York Rangers. He has walked out of interviews, sarcastically dismissed questions, and famously told New York reporter Larry Brooks to get the F out of here.
And it's kind of a waste of time.
Well, then get the fuck out of here then.
And no player is safe from his wrath. He is famous for his willingness to bench or healthy scratch the star players to send a message. He did it to Stanley Cup MVP Brad Richards in New York. He did it to high-priced offensive stars Patrick Laine and Pierre-Luc Dubois in Columbus, creating public friction that led to both players demanding trades. His message is always clear. No one is bigger than the team, and no one is exempt from his standards. His coaching philosophy is safe as death. He demands an aggressive, shot-blocking, relentless style of hockey that is physically and mentally grueling. It is a style that won him a Stanley Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning in 2004, but has also been criticized as outdated and creatively stifling. John Tortorella is without a doubt one of the most hated coaches in the league for opponents and media alike. But for the players who buy into his demanding system, they become fiercely loyal, willing to run through a wall for the most intense man in hockey. But some coaches are hated for reasons that go far beyond tough love or media battles. They're hated for actions that cross the line into abuse. Actions so serious they get you fired and run out of the league for good. Bill Peters' downfall wasn't a slow burn. It was a sudden and spectacular explosion. His story became a landmark moment for the NHL, a controversy that forced the entire hockey world to confront a toxic culture of racism and abuse that had been allowed to fester in the shadows for far too long. The story broke in November 2019. Peters was the head coach of the Calgary Flames when a former player, Akim Aliu, made a series of public allegations on Twitter. Aliu, his Nigerian-Canadian, detailed an incident from his rookie season in the AHL, a decade earlier, when Peters was his coach. Aliu alleged that Peters, angry about Aliu's choice of music in the dressing room, stormed in and dropped the N-bomb several times towards me. The accusation was shocking and horrifying. To make matters worse, two of Aliu's teammates from that season quickly came forward to corroborate his story, confirming that the incident had happened, exactly as Aliu described. The hockey world was put on notice. Just days later, as the Flames were investigating Aliu's claims, a second story emerged. Another former player, Michael Jordan, who had played for Peters with the Carolina Hurricanes, came forward with allegations of physical abuse. Jordan stated that Peters had kicked him pretty hard in the back and had also punched another teammate in the head on the bench during a game. The confirmation of this story came from an undeniable source, Rod Brindamore, who was an assistant coach on Peters' staff at the time. When asked about the incidents, Brindamore simply and powerfully stated that they did happen. With two separate, credible, and corroborated stories of racist and physical abuse against him, Bill Peters' position became untenable. After a tense, multi-day investigation by the Flames organization, he was forced to resign as head coach in disgrace. He hasn't coached in the NHL since.
I failed to create a safe place for Akim, and I'm deeply sorry.
The scandal was a brutal and necessary wake-up call for the league, a controversy that proved that the old-school, abusive tactics of the past would no longer be tolerated or protected by the Code of Silence. Long before Bill Peters or Mike Babcock, there was the original coaching tyrant, a man whose nickname Iron Mike was earned through a relentless, fear-based coaching style that left a trail of traumatized players and burned bridges across the league. Mike Keenan was a brilliant hockey mind, but he was also one of the most notoriously difficult and cruel coaches in NHL history. His entire philosophy was built on conflict. He believed that to get the most out of his players, he had to break them down mentally and physically. He thrived on creating a culture of chaos and fear, and he was famous for his legendary feuds with his own superstar players. In St. Louis, he waged a public war with Brett Hull. Despite Hull scoring an incredible 86 goals in a season under him, Keenan constantly questioned his toughness and his commitment to defense. Hull would later describe his time playing for Keenan as a living hell. In Chicago, he clashed with franchise icons like Denis Savard and Chris Chelios. His mind games with his goaltenders were legendary. He was known for pulling his starting goalie after a single bad goal, not as a strategic move, but as a form of public humiliation. His most infamous act of goaltender manipulation came in Montreal, after leaving star goalie Patrick Waugh in the net during a blowout loss to be shelled for 9 goals. A furious Waugh skated to the team president and declared he had played his last game for the Canadiens. Waugh was traded shortly after, a direct result of Keenan's brutal tactics. But here's the paradox of Mike Keenan. For a time, his methods worked. He was a master of the short-term fix. He took the Philadelphia Flyers to the Stanley Cup final twice. He took the Chicago Blackhawks to the final once. And in 1994, he finally reached the top of the mountain, coaching the New York Rangers to their first Stanley Cup in 54 years. However, his success was never sustainable. His tyrannical style wore players down, and his tenure at each stop ended in bitterness and acrimony. He is one of only 2 coaches to have worked for 7 different NHL franchises, a record that speaks not to his adaptability, but to how often his act wore thin. Iron Mike was the ultimate hired gun, a coach who could win you a championship but would destroy your locker room in the process. So, we've seen the tyrants, the manipulators, the coaches who ruled by fear. But that's only one way to lead. On the other side are the legends, the builders, the coaches who earn not just Stanley Cups, but also the undying loyalty and respect of their players. There are great coaches. There are Hall of Fame coaches. And then, on a level all by himself, there's Scotty Bowman, nicknamed the Professor. Bowman wasn't just a coach. He was a hockey intellectual, a strategic genius whose name is synonymous with winning. His career wasn't just successful. It was the most successful coaching career in the history of the sport, and it's not even close. The numbers are staggering, almost unbelievable in their scope. Bowman is the NHL's all-time leader in regular season coaching wins, with 1,244 victories. It's a record so far ahead of anyone else that is widely considered to be unbreakable, but his real legacy was forged in the playoffs. He is the only coach in history to win the Stanley Cup with 3 different franchises, and he did it 9 times. He built a dynasty with the Montreal Canadiens, winning 5 cups in the 1970s, including 4 in a row. He won another with the Pittsburgh Penguins in 1992, and he cemented his legendary status by building another dynasty with the Detroit Red Wings, winning 3 more cups in 1997, 1998, and 2002. His true genius, however, was his ability to manage superstars. Over his 30-year career, he coached a staggering number of Hall of Fame players. In Montreal, it was legends like Guy Lafleur, Ken Dryden, and Larry Robinson. In Pittsburgh, it was Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr. And in Detroit, it was Steve Yzerman, Nicholas Lidstrom, and the legendary Russian Five. Bowman wasn't a player's coach in the modern, friendly sense. He could be distant, demanding, and incredibly tough, but he was fair and he was brilliant. He understood the psychology of his star players, knowing exactly how to challenge them and push them to new heights without alienating them. He commanded respect not through friendship, but through his unparalleled knowledge of the game. He was a constant innovator. As the league changed, Bowman changed with it. In the 1990s, as the dead puck era was taking hold, he popularized a left-wing lock defensive system with the Red Wings. It was a brilliant tactical adjustment that stifled opposing offenses and was quickly copied across the league. Bowman's ability to adapt and evolve is why he was able to win championships in 3 different decades with 3 completely different types of teams. He is, without question, the greatest coach to ever stand behind the bench. While Scotty Bowman was the professor, Pat Burns was the cop. And it wasn't just a nickname. Before he was an NHL head coach, Burns was a police officer, and he brought that blue-collar, no-nonsense mentality with him to the rink every single day. He was a demanding, often intimidating, and fiery coach who could scream and rage with the best of them. But underneath the gruff exterior was a man of fierce loyalty, a coach who was universally beloved by his players because they knew he would go to war for them. His career is a testament to his ability to get results, no matter the city or the roster. He's the only coach in NHL history to win the Jack Adams Award, awarded as the league's Coach of the Year with 3 different teams, the Montreal Canadiens, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Boston Bruins. Winning the award with 3 separate Original 6 franchises, 2 of which are bitter rivals, is a feat that speaks volumes about his impact. He could step into any locker room, in any high-pressure market, and immediately make the team better. Burns was the classic tough but fair player's coach. He demanded hard work and accountability, and he wasn't afraid to get in a player's face. But that same intensity was directed at anyone outside the locker room who dared to criticize his team. Burns was famous for his combative relationship with the media, always protecting his players and creating an us-against-the-world mentality that his teams thrived on. Players from Ty Domi to Matt Sundin were famously loyal to him, recognizing that his demanding nature was born from a deep desire to win and a genuine care for the men he was leading. For years, despite his success, the one thing that eluded him was the Stanley Cup. Burns had come close with powerful teams in both Montreal and Toronto, but had never reached the summit. That all changed in 2003. In his second season as a coach of the New Jersey Devils, Burns finally guided his team all the way. The image of the tough, emotional coach finally lifting the Stanley Cup over his head is one of the most heartwarming moments in hockey history. It was the crowning achievement for a man who had earned the respect of the entire hockey world. After a long battle with cancer, Burns was posthumously inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2014, a long overdue honor for one of the most beloved and respected coaches the game has ever known. But the era of the tough-as-nails, old-school coach has given way to a new generation of leaders. The modern NHL coach is a different breed and a master of communication and culture who connects with today's players on a completely different level. If you were going to build the perfect modern head coach in a lab, you would end up with Rod Brind'Amour. He's a franchise icon, a legendary workhorse, and a coach who commands a level of universal respect that is almost unheard of in the modern game. He is, by all accounts, the ultimate player's coach. His legendary status in Carolina was already cemented long before he stepped behind the bench. He was the captain who in 2006 led the Carolina Hurricanes to their one and only Stanley Cup. He was the heart and soul of the franchise as a player, and he has become that all over again as their coach. His nicknames, Rod the Bod and the Rodfather, are a testament to his famous commitment to physical fitness, a standard he still upholds to this day. His entire coaching philosophy is built on a simple premise: lead by example. Brind'Amour is famous for his grueling post-practice workouts, sessions that he still participates in himself. It's not uncommon for players to see their 50-year-old coach outworking them in the gym after a tough skate. This isn't a tactic to intimidate or shame his players, it's a form of inspiration. He creates a culture of accountability where no one in the organization has an excuse not to give their absolute best, because they know their coach is doing the same. This old-school work ethic is paired with a modern understanding of today's athlete. Because he's not far removed from his own playing days, he connects with his players on a personal level. Brind'Amour is known for his brutal honesty and directness. Players consistently praise him for his clear communication. There are no mind games and no hidden agendas. He tells his players exactly where they stand, what he expects from them, and what they need to do to succeed. This has created a deep well of trust and loyalty in the Hurricanes locker room. He has also understood the importance of building a positive and fun team culture. When the Hurricanes began their storm surge post-game celebrations, a series of creative and entertaining on-ice skits to celebrate home wins, some old-school critics called it unprofessional. Brind'Amour, however, embraced it. He understood that it was a way for his players to build camaraderie and to connect with their fan base. It was a perfect example of his modern approach. After years of struggling, he has transformed the Hurricanes into a perennial Stanley Cup contender, winning the Jack Adams Award in 2021 as the league's best coach. He is the new blueprint for a head coach, a perfect blend of old-school intensity and modern leadership. While Rod Brind'Amour represents the modern player turned coach, Jon Cooper represents something else entirely, the eloquent outsider who became a dynasty builder. Cooper's path to the top is one of the most unconventional in the sport. He never played professional hockey. Before he was drawing up power plays, he was a public defender, practicing law for several years after getting his law degree. It's this unique background that has shaped him into one of the most successful and respected coaches in the NHL today. Cooper's coaching style is built on communication and logic. He's not a screamer, he's not a tyrant. He's a master motivator who treats his locker room like a jury that he needs to persuade. Instead of ruling with an iron fist, Cooper builds a logical case. He uses video and analytics to present his players with clear, evidence-based arguments for why his systems and strategies will work. This approach respects the intelligence of the modern superstar athlete. It creates a collaborative environment where players are not just following orders. They are buying into a shared plan because they understand the reasoning behind it. His ability to manage a locker room filled with high-end superstar talent is second to none. For years, he has successfully guided a Tampa Bay Lightning roster featuring players like Steven Stamkos, Nikita Kucherov, and Victor Hedman, and Andrei Vasilevsky. He has earned their respect by being both incredibly prepared and personable, empowering his veteran leaders and giving them a voice. And the results are undeniable. Cooper has built a modern-day dynasty in Tampa Bay. He led the Lightning to back-to-back Stanley Cups in 2020 and 2021, and followed that up with a third straight appearance in the Stanley Cup Final in 2022. In an era of salary caps and league-wide parity, that level of sustained success is remarkable. Jon Cooper is the ultimate proof that the best leader isn't always the loudest person in the room, or the one who played the game at the highest level. He is the eloquent architect of a championship culture, a coach who has reached the pinnacle of the sport by being smarter, more prepared, and a better communicator than anyone else. So, there you have it, the tyrants and the tacticians, the coaches who became the story for all the wrong reasons, and the ones who earned their players' respect for all the right ones. They prove that in the battle for the Stanley Cup, the most important mind in the game is often the one behind the bench. So, which coach did we miss? Let us know in the comments.